Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the March 2023 Saint John Naturalists Club webinar. So today's webinar, we're going to be joined by Nature New Brunswick, and they're going to share with us all of the work that they're doing, the conservation work they're doing in the Saint John region. I'm Julie Bauer. I'm the program coordinator for the club and its projects. And our club's all about exploring and appreciating nature. And we have plenty of outdoor activities such as hikes and birding, nature walks, stuff like that. So we are open to anyone who shares a passion for nature and wants to connect with other like-minded individuals. We also have several major conservation projects, one of which is Point Lepreau Bird Observatory. And I'll just mention that just recently started its spring migration count season just this week. And we are always looking for more volunteers to help count the migrating seabirds that pass along the point each spring. So just get in contact with us. You can find more information on our website. And so today's webinar, we're going to be joined with Adam Cheeseman, Lauren Verner, Alysha McGrattan, and Ray Sharp. And they're going to share projects such as the Port of Saint John Waterbird Survey, the Monarch Butterfly Conservation, protected nature areas, the City Nature Challenge, and more. So I'll just go in and see here. So one of the speakers today is Lauren Verner. Lauren Verner is the Conservation Program Coordinator with Nature NB. She's a graduate of the University of New Brunswick, where she studied environment and natural resources with a focus on wildlife conservation. Lauren loves all things outdoors, and you can often find her birdwatching or hiking local trails with her golden retriever, Arlo. When she's not exploring the outdoors, you can find her curled up on the couch with a cup of tea, playing Animal Crossing. Alysha McGrattan, born and raised in Fredericton, Alysha graduated from the University of New Brunswick with a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary leadership and biology, and then migrated south to Belize in 2014 for 5 years, where she worked in tropical conservation and endangered species recovery. Now back in New Brunswick, Alysha connects people with nature across the province as the education manager for Nature NB and has been the lead on the Monarch project since 2019. Ray Sharp, having always been an outdoor enthusiast, Ray has followed her passion for the environment from coast to coast. She did 3 years at Alderleaf Wilderness College in Seattle, Washington, where she learned about wilderness survival, wild edible and medicinal plants, permaculture, wildlife tracking, and so much more. She then returned east and completed her wildlife technician diploma at Holland College in PEI. Ray has been with Nature New Brunswick as their conservation coordinator for the past 3 years. So throughout the webinar today, we encourage you to ask questions and share your thoughts in the chat box. I'm going to pass it over to Alysha right now, and she's going to share her screen and begin.
Okay, hi everyone. Let me see if I can get this going. Could Julie or Lauren or Ray maybe just let me unmute themselves and let me know that
we can see
the screen? Okay, great. So thanks everyone for coming today. I see a lot of familiar names in the participant list. So Nature NB just wants to share some of the projects that we have going on right now in the Saint John region. We're going to try to keep the presentation relatively short and have lots of times for questions at the end. So Lauren's going to speak first a little bit about the Port of Saint John Waterbird Survey. Then I'll talk a little bit about our Monarch project. Ray will talk about some of the stewardship projects that we have going on, and then I'll talk again about the Festival of Nature towards the end. And then any questions that anyone has at the end, we can all you can write in the chat, feel free as you're going on. I'll monitor the chat if there's anything that like needs clarifying right away, but we can revisit the chat at the end as well to make sure that we haven't missed any questions. But Julie, do people have the capability of like unmuting to ask questions in this webinar at the end?
I can give people permission to do that if they just want to write in the chat that they have to speak it out loud. I have no problem doing that.
Yeah, I mean, whatever works best. We're happy to answer questions through the chat, or people can like unmute and turn their video on if that's the preference, so that we can answer those questions at the end. So I will hand it over to Lauren.
Thanks, Alysha. So hello, everyone. My name is Lauren. I think I've had the pleasure of meeting a lot of you already. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Port of Saint John Waterbird Survey, which is a project that I've been working on with Nature and Bee for the past year or so. And so the Port of Saint John Waterbird Survey is a bird survey focusing on water birds, so gulls, ducks, cormorants, mergansers, anything like that. We also collect data on shorebirds in the relevant seasons when we're seeing shorebirds on the coastal areas. So this is a community science project. So I'm working with about 20 different volunteers that helped me survey a lot of sites around the Saint John area, and I'll show you a map of all the site areas in a moment. But the community volunteers are really essential to the project and very, very important. The project was initially started to inform oil spill preparedness. So it was part of the Coastal Environmental Baseline Program with Department of Fisheries and Oceans to inform oil spill preparedness. So as we all know, there's the oil refinery in the Saint John area. So it's really important that we would have data on birds, what areas they might be using, what seasons are super important for them in the event of a spill, so we can work towards sharing that data, rehabilitating the wildlife, and cleaning up the area. So we're collecting data on bird behavior and movements. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you so much. So in our data sheet, we're collecting information such as the number and the types of species, the proximity to shore. So are they on the shore? Are they near the shore? Or are they more far out in the shore? We're also recording things like the behavior. So this kind of relates to the site use. Are birds just flying over the site, or are they using it as a resting area, a feeding area, that type of thing? So recording behavior is really important just to see how birds are using that particular area. We're also recording any disturbances that we see. So people, predators, boats, you know, sometimes on a beach area, there will be a dog or a small child that will run and flush the birds. So if we see any disturbances like that, we record it. Sometimes when I first go to a site, just my approach, entering the site will disturb the birds. So if that happens, I record that as well. We also record the direction of movement. So if a bird is flying over a site, or if they stay at the site for a while and then leave, where are they going once they're leaving? So the direction. We also record things like weather conditions and any other notable observations. So for example, birds that might not be a target for the survey, but if we notice a large congregation of some other type of bird, we might note that, or anything special at a particular site. Next slide, please. So here you can see the survey site map, and there's about 30 or so sites that we're surveying year round. You can see there's a good concentration of survey sites around the Port of Saint John area. which is very important to inform that oil spill preparedness. We also have sites spreading out towards the Kingston Peninsula and all the way down to Lorneville and Musquash and that area, just to really capture the entire area and see how things are different across the landscape. Something else I wanted to note is that we survey once per season. However, we do 2 surveys during the fall season just to capture migration. Typically during the fall, we're noticing higher counts, and we're noticing a lot of movements and changes in what the birds are doing. So we have 2 survey periods during the fall, just to really capture that important data. Next slide, please. So just some high level kind of results type things, lessons learned that we've gathered so far. I also want to draw your attention to the nice photo there on the slide. That was an event I did in February with the Nature Trust, just gathering up some volunteers from the Port of Saint John Waterbird Survey and some potential new volunteers. So we had a nice day at the Irving Nature Park there. So some lessons learned or results that we've gathered so far. Species at risk. The Port of Saint John is home to several species at risk. That might not be a surprise to some of you, but I think that's an important data point to have, just to highlight that Saint John is an area that is important for wildlife, especially species at risk, and just further highlighting the importance of conservation in this area. And also at the Irving Nature Park was one of the sites where we saw a few species at risk, including some shorebirds at risk. Another result or high level kind of message that we found was about urban areas. So some of our most abundant and diverse sites were actually in highly urban areas, very developed areas. You could say these are very polluted areas as well. In towards Courtney Bay, right in there where the water is flowing out from Marsh Creek. Some of those areas were extremely abundant and diverse with birds. So it kind of poses an interesting opportunity to do conservation in a very urban area. So thirdly, community connection is super important for this project. Maintaining strong relationships with volunteers is very important. So making sure that I'm keeping in touch with everyone and that we have strong relationships there is super important. I could not do this project without all the volunteers. Lastly, the data sharing. So all of our data is available publicly for free online on the St. Lawrence Global Observatory website. If you're interested in that, just post in the chat and I can share that link with you. But ensuring that data is, open, freely available to the public is very important. So anybody can go in and see what we're doing and the progress over the years. We've also recently started to upload our data to the Atlantic Canada Conservation Data Center, which is a database that is specifically used by the New Brunswick government when they're doing their species at risk work. So we think that sharing data there is also going to be important moving forward. Next slide, I believe it's the last one. So yeah, if you're interested in getting involved, I'm always happy to have more volunteers. There's my email right there. I can also share my email again afterwards. But that's a little bit about the Port of Saint John Waterbird Survey. And I hope that you enjoyed what I had to say. And again, post in the chat if you have questions, comments, etc. And we'll try to get to that at the end. And that is all from me. Hand it back to you, Alysha.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. Julie, would you be able to turn my camera back on? I'm not sure where did you guys go?
Sorry, I'm not sure. I'm not seeing anything here. You should be able to, but okay. I know I did turn it off.
Yeah, that's so weird. I can't see any of the meeting controls now. I can only, I can't even see. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen for 1 second and hopefully this comes back and then, okay, sorry about that, everyone. Start again. Okay, that's better. Can everyone see again?
Yeah.
Okay, and Julie, I might have to have you turn my camera. Oh, actually, now I think I can stop my video. Okay, I see that. Sorry about that. You'd think after all of this time being online, Zoom would be second nature now, but I feel like I'm always learning something. Has there been any questions in the chat that we need to address so far? Or are we good to proceed? I can't see the chat. What's sharing my screen?
Nope, nothing
Okay, all
yet.
good. Great. Okay. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of our Monarch project at Nature NB. So it's called Monarch Awareness in NB, Increasing Our Knowledge and Empowering Volunteers to Take Action. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have had Jim Wilson, who I think is on the call today, his wonderful presentation on the life cycle of the Monarch. So I'm really not going to touch on that at all, but of course, if there's any questions at the end, feel free to ask. What I will talk about is specifically what we've been able to achieve in 2022, building on this project since 2019. So for anyone that doesn't know, there's been an estimated 84% population decline of Eastern monarchs between 1996 and 2014. And as of August 29th, 2022, the provincial government has officially recognized monarch butterflies as being endangered in New Brunswick. So our project focuses on some key pillars, including increasing participation in community science initiatives so that we have a better understanding of what the breeding population of monarchs looks like in New Brunswick and where milkweed and other important plant species for monarchs occur. Developing workshops and resources, municipal and business/industry engagement, and milkweed seed distribution, thanks to the SJNC. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about some of these things right now. So in the years that Nature NB has been encouraging community science observation of monarch butterflies, monarchs have become the 5th most observed species in New Brunswick on iNaturalist. So that's pretty cool if you ask me, especially considering it's an endangered species. I don't think that there are any other endangered species that have been observed as frequently as monarch butterflies. And I've had people all over the province sharing that data. So Nature NB has a monarchs and milkweed project on iNaturalist that automatically will filter all observations of monarch butterflies in any life stage, so eggs, caterpillars, chrysalis butterfly, along with swamp milkweed and common milkweed. And it houses all of those observations together on iNaturalist, so we're very easily able to see how many observations that we have, who's observing these species, and where the observations are occurring. So far we have 1,345 observations of monarchs and milkweed on iNaturalist. Getting ahead of myself. And we've seen exponential growth every year in the observations on iNaturalist, which is really promising. And hopefully it's something that we can continue to see, although we know that at some point, you know, the rate of growth will inevitably slow down. But we had 598 observations in 2022 compared with 242 observations in 2021. So we had a lot of growth this year, which is great to see. We also really strongly encourage folks to use a community science application called Mission Monarch, and it's quite different than iNaturalist in the sense that the surveys and the information collected on milkweed is more extensive than just the snapshot that the iNaturalist app will take. So far, we've conducted 455 Mission Monarch surveys in New Brunswick, which has translated to 25,951 individual milkweed plants being monitored for eggs, caterpillars, well, really eggs, caterpillars, and chrysalis, though we don't see those very often. So here's a photo of one of our summer students last year, Emily, kind of demonstrating how to check milkweed for monarchs. And I also just wanted to make a note that the Mission Monarch staff that we've worked with very closely since 2019, they're based out of the Montreal Insectarium at the Biodome in Montreal. And they're actually going to be traveling to New Brunswick, to Saint John, to come to the Festival of Nature in June, and are going to be putting on a workshop all around monitoring of monarchs and milkweed. So hopefully we see some of you or a lot of you there. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the distribution of milkweed seeds. So far this year, we've had our highest year ever in terms of distributing milkweed seeds, and we've been able to distribute 3,128 packets over the course of 2022. And obviously that's thanks to the SJNC and the Monarch Working Group that have collected the milkweed seed, the swamp milkweed seeds, and packaged them up really nicely. We're so thankful to the many hours of volunteer work that takes. So we started last year sending out a survey right around this time of year to track the success of you know, how people are finding the process of germinating the seeds, how many plants they now have in their gardens, if they're seeing monarchs in their gardens, and that has been really interesting to look at. This year, to date, we're still getting respondents back. We sent out the survey earlier this week, so some of you might have seen that. We've had about 230 responses to the survey so far. Not entirely surprisingly, about half of the respondents have just received their milkweed in the last year, so they haven't really been able to see the fruits of their labor yet. But it's a really great mechanism to kind of figure out how that milkweed seed mail out process is going, and hear little things, anecdotes like this. I remember as a kid, monarchs were almost everywhere, but now they're almost never seen. I think it's great to try to create an environment to welcome them back. So some of this feedback has been really nice to hear from the survey. I loved this too. I'm really excited to try to get these seeds to grow along with the bees. We need to save our monarchs. Butterflies are a symbol of our loved ones that have passed, and we get a lot of comfort out of seeing them. I always talk about this whenever I'm giving a workshop. I think in the conservation sector, we really we tend to only focus on the ecological significance of species and the ecosystem services that they provide. But with monarchs, I think it's so much more than that. They're really culturally unimportant species. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've had so much success in bringing people together to take action to support monarch butterflies, because they're more than just pollinators to people. A lot of people have a spiritual connection of some sort to them. We also have developed many workshops and resources, and specifically in regards to monarchs in New Brunswick. We delivered 4 workshops in 2022, and we've developed several different resources that can be found at naturenb.ca/monarchs. We are engaging different municipalities and industry as well. So Hampton and Capillet, which is now the community has conglomerated into a new municipality called Cap Acadie. They have both signed the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. They're the only 2 municipalities in the province that have signed it so far. So what the Mayor's Monarch Pledge is it's a online pledge through the David Suzuki Foundation and the National Wildlife Federation in the States that encourages municipalities to take tangible action towards monarch conservation. So it's great to see that. We hope to see several more this year that are signing on. We have developed a really great working relationship with Government House in Fredericton, thanks to Jim and Jean Wilson and Janet Kempster, along with, I'm sure, other Monarch volunteers in Saint John as well. So it's been really great to work with them in terms of putting on different community science events and growing milkweed and raising monarchs for education purposes at Government House. We're in talks with MB Power to change some of their mowing practices along their power lines and restore pollinator habitat. We've also started a nice relationship with Roosevelt International Park on Campobello Island. This is actually, can you see my mouse? If you can't see my mouse, the top right picture on this slide is the swamp milkweed that they've planted at the park. They also have some really beautiful natural wildflower meadows in the park that are a great nectar source for butterflies and other pollinators as well. But I don't know if you can see the milkweed in this photo kind of looks a little bit worse for wear, but that's because they had what I presume to be dozens and dozens of monarch caterpillars that had been munching away all summer. And so this photo was taken last September. We're starting great relationships with Parks NB as well in terms of putting up planting milkweed, running community science events at their parks, putting up monarch habitat signage in parks, and changing mowing practices as well. And we've also developed a really nice relationship with Sunset U-Pick in Fredericton. So this map here is actually of an area that they had been using. So this entire area here had been mown every year to use as overflow parking for the U-Pick. And this entire field is full of milkweed. And so we've worked with the owners of Sunset U-Pick to start to leave some of this field unmowed. So the first year that we approached them was summer 2021 about this, because we noticed that this was a really significant area in Fredericton for monarch breeding. And they agreed to leave, I would say, just under half of the area completely unmowed. And so we considered that a really big win, especially because all along they'd been mowing it entirely. And it usually would happen during the first week of July. So not a great time to be mowing, since that's usually when the monarchs will arrive in Fredericton. And last year, they left a significant amount more. So if you can see here, it's really just the first, I would say, like 15 or 20 feet next to the road here that they've mowed, and then had left this entire area. So year by year, we're getting them to leave a little bit more. This photo is actually taken with the Fredericton Nature Club. We went out and did a survey of the monarchs in the milkweed last late July. So we're really pleased with how that relationship is going. And we've put up signage. We've had a lot of, it's been a great kind of symbiotic relationship, because people who are coming into the U-Pick to get their strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries see the signs for the monarchs on the way in. And a lot of them have been very complimentary to the U-Pick owners for designating that space for monarchs. The last thing that I want to talk about is something new that we've added to our monarch project as of this past year. So 2022 was our first year doing this, where we're looking at staging habitat. So I don't want to take up much more time, but staging habitat is significant habitat for monarchs where during their migration, where they're looking for significant sources of nectar before a big leg of their journey where they might not be able to feed along the way. So where this happens in New Brunswick is along the Bay of Fundy. And what we found is that it happens in really specific locations. So early last year, we were working with several folks from the Saint John Naturalists Club. Shout out to Jim again, and Janet, and also the Canadian Wildlife Service. And we were trying to identify areas that may support monarchs in large number during their migration. And so we visited 27 sites between August 30th and September 13th, all along the Bay of Fundy. And we collected information on habitat characteristics, so weather conditions, the floral resources that were present, and monarch abundance and behavior. We tagged 30 monarchs in 5 different locations. And hang on, I'll get to that in a second. So these areas here in southeast New Brunswick really weren't very fruitful in terms of finding monarchs. I think we saw 1 monarch in all of these locations. Same with all of the locations in more southwest New Brunswick. We saw, I think, over the course of 3 days in these areas, I think we might have seen 3 or 4 monarchs. And then all of a sudden in these areas along the Wolastoq Saint John River, Point Lepreau, and Southwest Head Lighthouse on Grand Manan, we saw monarchs, in some locations more than 80 to 100 monarchs. So obviously this being our first year doing this survey, we can't say anything definitively, but it does really look like monarchs have a specific migratory route in New Brunswick, and certain locations are incredibly important for them in late summer as they're migrating. Also want to give a shout out to Anne Driscoll. She found a roost of about 30 monarchs in Irving Nature Park in mid-September. And this is what we spent like 2 weeks looking for. We were able to find a roost of 1 monarch on Southwest Head in Grand Manan, but hadn't seen anything like this. And as far as I know, this is, I think, the biggest monarch roost ever documented in New Brunswick, at least as far as I'm aware of. So for those of you in the Saint John area, especially along this kind of area here in late summer through September, keep your eyes out for roosts. If you ever see any monarchs congregating on trees in this way, please let me know about it. I would really appreciate hearing about that, because it is something that's not often seen or hasn't been well documented up until this point. Now I'm going to hand it over to Ray, and she's going to talk about our IBA and PNA programs.
Actually, before that, there are a couple questions in the chat box if you want to talk about those, Alysha.
Okay, should I talk about them now? Are they ones that can, like, is it clarification questions, or hang on, let me read through. Okay, I can do that. Vicky says, are you able to see if the increase is because you have more observers submitting, or a steady number of observers are seeing more monarchs? I'm assuming this is in reference to the iNaturalist project. So it's more observers, which is really great to see. I can actually, hang on. I can look up those numbers while Ray's speaking, and actually let you know how many, what the number of observer increase from year to year has been, but that's been really significant too, which is great to see. Is the decline due in part to the climate change in Mexico? Yes, absolutely. That's one of the kind of more depressing things that is going on, you know, in terms of like what we can do for monarchs in New Brunswick. Their overwintering sites are really fragile in a way. They're really, really vulnerable to, for instance, storms. There was a storm that came by, I think sometime in the 2010s. I can again look this up. And something like 80% of the monarchs in a certain overwintering site in Mexico were decimated because they got, I think, like freezing rain or hail in that area. So climate change in Mexico is a huge issue, and one that we don't have very much control over. And so that's why really monarch conservation is a tri-national effort between Canada, the US, and Mexico in terms of getting anywhere with saving the species. Can we approach rural districts who do not have a mayor but an advisory council? Yes, absolutely. That would be great. And for anyone who's interested, we really need some sort of local champion for monarchs who can help us approach municipalities to sign the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. So if anyone on the call is interested in doing that with their municipality or rural district, please reach out to me and let me know. Cynthia said, I received milkweed seeds this year and I'm planning to plant a garden, including asters. This project really interests me. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cynthia. And thanks for including nectar sources for the monarchs as well. That's just as important, having those sources for the adults to feed from when they come to lay their eggs. Great. Okay, I think that's it for me. So Ray, do you want to continue now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, and I know how to turn my camera off, so I'm gonna do that. Oh crap.
Great.
It disappeared on me. There we go.
Perfect. Okay, so I won't take up too much of your time, but I'm going to talk about our IBA and PNA projects that are all over the province. So IBA are important bird areas and PNAs are protected natural areas. So these projects are very similar in a lot of ways, where we have volunteer caretaker positions. So essentially all over New Brunswick, there are important bird areas and protected natural areas all over. IBAs are more focused on more island areas, and the PNAs are more local inland. But essentially what you would do with Nature MB, if you are interested in this program, is you would take on being a steward for these sites. You would go to these sites 1 to 2 times a year, and you do a lot of data collection, anything from monitoring for things like cutting or any pollution. You know, if you see any new ATV tracks going into PNA specifically, all that kind of stuff. So it's a super cool program where you can kind of go out on your own to these really important sites. And yeah, you do a lot of data collection and species identification out there. Yeah, next slide. So these are the IBAs that are near the Saint John region. There's a lot of them. But the cool thing is all of Grand Manan is one. So that's really cool. The ones that I have highlighted are the ones that we have stewards for currently. Actually, I think a couple of you on this call are part of that, which is really cool. So yeah, so essentially with the IBA program, you'll visit these sites if you have access to a boat, for some of them, and sometimes we'll do beach cleanups. So at St. Rest Marsh, we do a beach cleanup every year, and that's when we do our monitoring for that one. And yeah, in Quaco Bay, Point Lepreau, Quadri region, kind of all of these are really, really cool areas that we monitor. And then we send off all of the information that we've gathered throughout the year to the province. And if there's anything that's really important data that we've collected, they help deal with it then. Next slide. And this is all of our PNAs near Saint John. There is a lot more than on this list. You can see kind of all the little tiny ones that are in there. Loch Alva is a really big one that you see kind of near the number 7 on the highway. We do have one steward for there. If you haven't been to Loch Alva P&A, it's beautiful. I think Turtle Mountain is close to that, or whether it might be in that area. It's a nice hike. Yeah, so currently we only have one steward monitoring the Loch Alva P&A, but there are tons to monitor throughout this area. So if you're interested, let me know. They're super fun. I love visiting the P&As in New Brunswick. I think they're super, super special. And yeah, that's pretty much the IBA P&A program. Alysha, I think this is back to you. Yeah.
Just again, it disappears.
No problem.
Great. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Festival of Nature, because that's happening, for those of you that don't know, in Saint John this year. Our kind of home base is at the Qplex in Quispam. So it's happening between Friday, June 2nd and Sunday, June 4th. And so on Friday, we are going to have our AGM, and there's also going to be a landfill tour. And I think that's the Saint John landfill. Lauren or Ray, please, or Julie, please correct me if I'm wrong. But that's going to
Crane
be,
Mountain.
it is Saint John?
I believe it's Crane Mountain.
Crane Mountain landfill. Okay, thank you. So I believe they're doing a tour of the landfill itself, and then birding, of course, at the landfill. Saturday, some neat trips that are happening is there's going to be a tour of Point Lepreau, and then we're going to be doing our banquet club and club presentations in the evening. And then on Sunday, there's going to be lots more field trips. We really have field trips covering like all aspects of you know, nature, recreation, art, anything you can think of. We've probably got it going on. And again, just to plug, the Mission Monarch folks are coming from Montreal and are going to be doing their workshop on Sunday morning, most likely. What else about the festival? Yeah, so just some fun photos from the festival. I think I recognize a lot of names on this call. I'm sure most of you have either come to a festival in the past, or many festivals in the past, or are already planning on coming in Saint John. So thanks to you on the call, those of you who have helped with organizing some trips. I think this year is going to be a really awesome year, and I can't wait. That's pretty much it. I'm sure most of you know how to get in contact with us. If not, we can put our emails in the chat, or you can always contact Julie to connect you with any of the staff at Nature NB. So I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we have time for more questions if there are any. Okay. So again, if folks have questions, and you can either unmute yourself if Julie, you're able to allow people to unmute, or write in the chat, whatever works better.
Yeah, so people can unmute themselves. I did
great.
give permission for everyone that can unmute themselves if they'd like.
Okay, great. So I see Ronald has his hand up.
Hi.
Hi.
In the first presentation, it was mentioned that there were a number of species at risk in the Saint John area, but they weren't named. Could you can you specify what species they were?
Yeah, Lauren, do you want to unmute and turn your video on and field that question?
Sure.
You can group them if there are hundreds.
Yeah, great question. There's been a few species at risk sightings. I don't want to cite the wrong thing, so let me just make sure I'm giving you the correct information here. Just while I'm pulling this up, I'll just start by saying they were seen at various sites around the Saint John area, including Irving Nature Park, but also Courtney Bay and a few other sites. Species at risk. So we had observations of harlequin duck, horned grebe, Hudsonian godwit, lesser yellowlegs, and some various shorebirds, peeps species. Hopefully that answers your question. If you have any more questions about the data, the observations specifically, you can definitely email me and I'm happy to chat about that.
Oh, thank you. I was simply curious, but they are all birds that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it's really important to note that, just because St. John can sometimes be overlooked as far as needing conservation. So, you know, the fact that we're seeing these rare or at-risk birds in the area and we're seeing them over the years as well, I think it is really neat, and it really highlights the importance of continuing to survey and continuing to gather this data.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Any other questions? Someone I had seen, Cynthia had written in the chat, is there a site to register for the festival? I posted the link in the chat to our website. Tickets aren't available yet. They'll be available in April, and the full schedule will be available by the end of the month. Okay, doesn't seem like there's any more questions. So Julie, should we wrap this up then?
Yeah, sure. So if there's no more questions, I just want to thank all of you for attending this webinar. And thank you so much to Nature New Brunswick, Alysha, Lauren, and Ray for explaining to us all of the interesting conservation projects that are going on right in the Saint John area. It's really great to see that there's so many different ways we can all get involved in protecting the natural area around here. So so thank you so much once again. And our next webinar is going to be April, let me just see here, April 15th at 10 a.m. And we're going to have a guest speaker, Jim Landry, and he's going to share about the Vimy Ridge oak tree planting project that he's been involved with. And so hopefully you guys can attend that. And other than that,
Actually, Julie, I just thought of, sorry to interrupt, and sorry to,
no problem.
I don't want to keep anyone on longer. But I just remembered the question that I think Vicky had about the number of volunteer observers versus like the number of monarchs that we're seeing reported. So I just wanted to give some context to that. So in 2021, on iNaturalist, Mission Monarch, and eButterfly combined, we had, in 2020, there was 46 observers of monarchs, individual observers on all of those 3 sites. 2021, we saw 118 in total. And then in 2022, new observers, 118. And then in 2022, there was 229 new observers. So every year we're seeing significantly more new observers as well, which kind of, especially for iNaturalists, where you can record any species on iNaturalist, monarchs have this like added benefit of kind of being a gateway species to use in community science applications as well. So that is really great to see.
So you'd mentioned that Nature NB has a project on iNaturalist for monarchs and milkweed.
Yep.
What is the name of that? I tried to search it real quick, but I don't
It's
know if I
called
typed in everything.
Monarchs and Milkweed in New Brunswick.
Okay.
And
I'll look that
regardless
up.
of whether you're following the project or not, if you upload an observation of a monarch of swamp milkweed or common milkweed in New Brunswick, and the geotag, the location is registered as being in New Brunswick, your observation will automatically be funneled into our project.
Oh, okay, great.
I'm
sounds-
just seeing from Ray now too. I can facilitate a meet. Oh, this is direct for me. Ray, do you want me to read it out to everyone or not? Maybe not. But I see your message, and that would be great. Oh, I see you just unmuted yourself, Ray.
Yeah, I just want to say, Alysha, that you know, the Regional Service Commission has now got new mandates as of January 1st. It's been redesigned, and it involves the region as far as Hampton and Grand Bay. And so all the mayors meet basically monthly, and the mayor's pledge, I think, is really a valuable initiative. And Libby O'Hara from Quispamsis is someone we should approach, especially with the Festival of Nature being headquartered at the Qplex. I just wanted to basically throw that in, that, you know, there are 12 new rural districts that don't have a mayor. They just have an advisory council. And you mentioned that you've been in touch with them. You know, the one in this Regional Service Commission is Fundy Rural District, and it's huge. 6,000 people, has no mayor, just has an advisory council. And I'm sure their chair would be really open to signing the quasi-mayor's pledge on behalf of the Fundy Rural District. If you approach him, I think he's really a nice guy.
Great. That sounds. Sorry, there's a bit of an echo. Right? Can you mute yourself again? Thanks. I like can't hear myself think when there's an echo. No, that sounds really great. Yeah, the Mayor's Monarch Pledge definitely isn't exclusive to whether or not there's a mayor of a township or a district, as long as it's the people who are in charge of decision making on behalf of the community. So that sounds great. I'll definitely be in touch with you, Ray, about that. And especially with the cohort that you're talking about, that includes Hampton, because Hampton now, this will be their third summer of being involved in the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. So really they're now a leader in New Brunswick because of the steps that they're taking. So that's really great. Yeah, lots of opportunity. I think it's not a huge commitment for municipalities to take part in, and it's really great PR because, as I'm sure we've all experienced, people really love and relate to monarchs. So it's something pretty easy that communities can do to you know, make their residents feel like they care about these things. Great.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody. This has been awesome. And yeah, there's plenty of things we can do from here on out and participate in these projects. So thank you so much to Nature NB, and thank you to everybody for participating. And I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.